I'm Bob. I like coffee. I also like to tell stories. So, here at the Bobcast Coffee, it's time for a coffee break. So, take a coffee break with me and pour yourself a cup of your favorite Joe. By the time you're done with your coffee, you'll know something about me you really didn't need to know. But you'll have fun learning it. Just remember, my stories are true. For the most part.
This episode was brought to you by JM Insurance. JM Insurance. Do you have business, personal, or life insurance yet? Contact JM Insurance Agency to understand the benefits of insuring against the unforeseen circumstances of life. We have over 40 years of experience in the business and will guide with the best probable choice for your situation. Call us for more information at 405-353-0140 or visit our website at jminsurance.agency.
Today we're going to try something new. We're going to make a new coffee I have never had, and we're going to give it a taste test right on the podcast. We are looking at, if you didn't know, my birthday just came and went. 61 fabulous years. And what we're going to do is we're going to try a coffee that my youngest son got me for my birthday. So here at the wonderful coffee bar, we're going to take a look at Minions Dark Roast, bad to the bone. It is a whole bean, so we get to grind it. It's from narrowwayhomestead.com. And you know how picky I am about my coffees. So if my son thinks it's a pretty good coffee, I'm willing to give it a shot. So let's take a look at the wonderful brewing of a new coffee. Today we're going to take a look at how we make coffee here at the Reynolds household. I'm going to start out with one empty percolator. I do like percolating, and I know there's a big argument between how you make your coffee, and I will tell you that if you have great coffee, it doesn't matter if you percolate it, if you drip it, if you use the French press, or just do a simple pour over. These are all great ways of making coffee, and if you have good coffee to start with, you can't destroy good coffee by the way you're making it. If you have a bad coffee, you can't do anything to make it good. So start your coffee, brew it up the way you like to brew it. We're not using Death Wish today. We need to go and try this Minions Dark Roast Bad to the Bone. I love the look on this dog's face. I take it this is Minion, and with this kind of attitude, I'd love to meet that dog. My daughter-in-law Jordy made this one. This is a great cup. It really is. You think, it has all the little ridges and dimples and stuff, sort of like it's sort of melted down itself. But it gives you great places to hold on. And, you have good grip on that. That's an excellent cup. All right. Let's go back to watching. Riveting content. Hey, it's coffee time. I'll see you in the studio. As promised, hang on. As promised, we're going to be trying the Minions Dark Roast, Bad to the Bone. I swear there's something wrong with the soul of this dog, and I think I like it. We're going to be giving this coffee a first time try here, Bobcast Coffee. All right. To all of you, up your kilt. That's good coffee. No, that's very smooth coffee. That's wow. All right. If you are a Folgers drinker, you might as well just turn off because I don't talk to you. But if you drink anything else, go back through and take a listen to my All About Coffee. And I will tell you that on my scale of coffee, I would put this up on the top shelf. I would put this probably that's going to be a hard call. Hang on here. That's as smooth as a death wish. That is a tasty coffee. No lie here. NarrowwayHomestead.com. If you do not believe me, just go try some of this stuff. I think I'm going to do that more often, though. I think I'm going to start trying out some different coffees and giving you my taste test of those. So today, first coffee, really to get my thumbs up, thumbs down. I'm going to give this one a way thumbs up. This is good coffee. So, if your son gives you some of the Minions Dark Roast Bad to the Bone coffee for your birthday, you got a good kid. And thank you, Joshua. That's great coffee. And I think I might have to have some more. All right. Well, that's a good start to episode 55. I believe we're at 55. So we're going to have to take a look. And it's not a long episode. I just wanted to talk about one of my cars. So I've talked a lot about the Samurai. The Samurai was a very fun car. It came into my life and was exactly what I needed for a good solid 10 years. I drove it to death. It was fabulous. But what was the car before the Samurai? Before the Samurai was my college years. I got the Samurai right at the very end for my graduation. It was nice. So what was the car that I was going through life with before the Samurai? Well, that was a Mazda GLC. And I like to tease that it goes like crap. But I'll tell you, it wasn't a bad car. It was my first rotary engine car, which turned out to be kind of a nightmare because before then, I used to do all the work on my own car. When I met the rotary engine, I just said, nah, screw it. Because I just realized that cars were getting fancier than Bob is fancy. So that's where that ended up. But the GLC was very unique. Got me through most of my National Guard time. Got me out of high school and into college. But like I said, I really couldn't work on it. And when I was in college, I couldn't afford to have anybody else work on it. So, parents, when your kids are away at school, whether it's college, community college, whether they are going VOTEC or getting academic credits in other ways to further their life, keep an eye on their car and look for the telltale signs of the GLC. And avoid these pitfalls. So, one of the first things that happened when I was in college is I got a flat tire. So, what did I do? I put the spare on. And in that course of putting that spare on and then getting that tire eventually fixed somewhere during that semester, I lost one of the lug nuts. So what did I do? I just left that lug nut off. And then throughout time, I ended up losing another lug nut. For a long period of time, I drove that with 2 lug nuts missing off the front driver's tire. So the front left tire only had 2 lug nuts. And you're thinking, well, Bob, that's pretty stupid. Remember who we're talking. Have you not listened to the other 54 episodes of this? The smartest thing I ever did was get my wife to say yes. Outside of that, it's been pretty dicey. So, like I said, this was my National Guard in college car. Do you think I was wise? No. I had some very fun times. A GLC, the Samurai was a Jeep in miniature, and it did things that Jeeps did, and it did more. The GLC was not a Jeep until I got my hands on it. It went off-roading quite a bit. it was very nice because, it had a hatchback, and you could put several ice chests full of beer and a few survival foods, and you could go out and have a great weekend out in the woods. Another thing it would do is get me from college out to the armory and back so that I could do my National Guard time. One of these trips that we were going on, I'm driving along, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning because I'm in Ada, and I got to get to Holdenville, or as we like to say, Hooterville. And that's where that's where the armory was. So I had to get up pretty early to go. Well, it just so happens that the night before, we had a play that we were doing in college, and I had to go from the theater home, and then get a couple hours sleep, get up, get dressed, go to the armory. And that night, my friends decided that where they were going to hang out after the play was going to be my house. Well, it wasn't my house. Shan lived there. It was part of Shan's, domain also. But what ended up happening is about 25 people are in this tiny little living room right outside my bedroom getting drunk. And this is one of the times that my friends realized that Bob does not care about nudity, because I think it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. I slammed my door open, bare naked Bob, told everybody just to shut up. They were making I wasn't that nice. Shut up. You're making way too much noise, and I got to get up in 2 hours so I can go to do my guard duty, so I can turn around and come back and do closing night of the play, so that I can then turn around and go back to the armory. And, of course, my friends, being, the kind and respectful and absolutely adoring friends that I had, laughed. So I just got dressed, cursed at them some more, and I just got in my car. I figure I'll go to the armory, and I'll just park out there and go to sleep until people start to show up. So here it is, 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, backwoods Oklahoma. Bob's driving along in the GLC. I think by this time I had maybe 8 lug nuts left on the car. I had I think that's it. The second, hang on, we'll keep this in order. So I'm driving along, and there's one spot that I don't remember driving. It was about 10 miles, maybe 15 miles long. I just don't remember. Hopefully you don't get that very often. But I'm driving along, and all of a sudden, I open my eyes, and I'm just like, crap, where have I been for the life? I mean, I know I've traveled it. I've had to make some turns. And I'm thinking, wow, that was probably pretty dangerous, not realizing that the moment I opened my eyes, I hit railroad tracks, and I went airborne off the railroad tracks. And when I landed, it was with a massive noise. I mean, it was bottom out, scraping up, chunks of asphalt flying behind the poor little GLC. Bob white knuckled on the steering wheel, trying to stay on the road, which I didn't. And I end up over in the ditch, and my car is just making this horrible racket. So I jump out. I have my trusty lighter, because I don't have a flash. Oh, no, I had my flashlight because going to guard, so I got my flashlight, looked into the engine well, and my alternator is completely, all 4 bolts sheared off, and my alternator is just laying there, and the belt is flopping with the motor. So I turn off the motor, and I sit there and I think about it. I don't know what to do. I mean, I'm probably a good, in the car driving, 45 minutes still away from the armory. and I'm out in the middle of nowhere. There's maybe a couple of cows in the field next to me. And I'm just standing there, I'm leaned up against the side of the car trying to figure out how I'm going to make this car work. And I'm looking around, and there, before I knew God, God knew me. There I am, leaned up against the back or the side of my car, looking out into this field, and I look at the barbed wire fence, and there is this big spool of wire that they had been using on the fence. Not barbed wire, just straight wire, but they had been using on the fence to tighten things down, I guess, whatever they use that for on fence. And I sat there and I looked at it, and I ran back to my car, and I found my vice grips. Trusty vice grips. I don't know why I had vice grips in my car, but I seem to always have vice grips. So I run over to the fence, and I pull back probably 10 feet of this wire, and I take my vice grips, I get it in there, and I work it until it breaks off. Now, I run back over to the car. I take my vice grips, and I grab a hold of the first bolt that is sticking out the alternator bracket, and I work it, and I get it out, throw it away. Take the next one, get it out. I get all 4 of those bolts out. Now, I'm looking at the engine, the well itself, and the bracket. The bracket actually comes off the side of the engine a little bit, and I've got the 4 holes that it's supposed to mount onto, but I can't get those out. Not a problem. Looking at the clock, time's a ticking. Luckily, because I had to leave so early, I fell asleep driving and had this accident, but I still have time to play with this. So I hook a piece of wire through one of the holes, and then I wrap it all the way around that bracket and bring it in. I start sewing this alternator onto my car, and I'm pulling with the vice grips, and I pull, and I twist it back up, and I do that through all 4 eyes. I've got 2 big loops like this going in there, and then I take on the back, and I'm doing a little S figure 8 over the back of it, going both ways. I wire this thing like crazy, and it's actually on there pretty solid. Now I've got to figure out how to tighten and get my belt back on this thing. So I've got my trusty vice grip. I go down there and I loosen up that tension pulley down there at the bottom, and I'm looking around, and right next to where the barbed wire was a pole, piece of metal, like I think it was actually rebar. Maybe they had been using it for helping pull tension. I don't know. But I grabbed the rebar and I went back there and I jammed it down there in front, so I could pry that alternator. And when I got good tension, I took my vice grips and I sat there and I tightened it up best I could. Let go, slid back. Pulled it back again, tightened harder. Vice grips weren't that long, so I don't have a lot of leverage, but I'm doing everything. And I'm a young Bob at the time. So I finally get enough to hold. And I'm dry, and I put the wire back, because, hey, it was good for me, it's going to be good for somebody else. All right, I did keep the excess that I had left in the back end of the car, just in case. I put that rebar back where I found it. I got in my car, started it up, and the alternator light does not come on. It's working. So I start driving down the road. And I'm driving, and all of a sudden, the alternator light comes on. I pull over, I get out there, it looks good, I kind of shake it around, looks good, get back in there, alternator light's off. So I drive, alternator light comes on. I jump out, I shake it again, and I'm just, every time I have to stop, I get more frustrated. So I'm driving, the alternator light comes on, and I just take my wheel, and I just go, and the alternator light goes off. And I finally make it to the armory. Well, hey, I made it where I need to go. I'm totally frustrated and wired, so I am not falling asleep, so I don't get any more sleep. I get off of guard, and I actually had permission to leave a few minutes early, so I left at like 4:30 instead of 5. And I drove all the way back to Ada, went right into the green room, got dressed up, boom, 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 go. All right, get back in the car, drive back to the apartment, and then from there, I slept for a couple hours. They did not come back and party at our place that night. I got a few hours sleep, got dressed, got in the car, and the whole way out, I never had another alternator light come on. It was pretty cool. So I went through guard, got back home, went to class, and I don't drive during the week very much because I live just half a block off of campus. Life is good. And from then on, I drove with that. And every now and then, I'd be driving along, alternator light would come on, I'd just ease over to the curb, pop the curb a little bit, alternator light go off, and I'd just keep driving. Life was good. Another step on that car is I'm driving back from Oklahoma City at like 2 in the morning. I'm driving back, and I'm on I-40 heading down to Ada, going back to school, and just out of the blue, I'm just driving, life's good, and I start hearing a clunking noise from the front right. I go, that's different. Spot! And the whole car locks over and slams off the freeway down into the ditch. I hit the brakes, come to a skidding stop. What was that? Well, I'm not guard, so I don't have my flashlight, but I do have my trusty Bic lighter, and I have my vice grips. So I get up out there, and I'm looking around the car, and I look underneath the driver, or the passenger, wheel well, and I can't see anything, but the wheel's kind of loose, and I look up underneath there. The brake pad is held on by 2 bolts. That top bolt has worked its way out and fell off, having the brakes assembly lean forward and jam up inside the wheel well. That locked the wheel up and slammed me down into the ditch. Well, it's not locked into position. I can take my trusty vice grip and I beat on it a little bit and I got it to pop out, and it's okay. Now all I need is a bolt to hold that sucker on there. So what am I going to do? And I go and I go and I go and I find a bolt. I take my vice grips and I'm going through the car and I take a bolt out of the passenger seat belt. All right, I go in there and it won't fit. And I take a bolt out of the bolt that holds the seat down. And I get up and it won't fit. And I'm looking, I need something smaller. And I go to the back seat belt, and it's just a little bit smaller diameter. And I pop it out, and I get up underneath it, and I screw it in, and it fits. And I'm like, this is fabulous. Except it's also about an inch too long. So now that plate, that assembly just wants to shuffle back and forth, back and forth. Now what do I do? So I go in and I look for anything I can use as a washer, no washers. And so I take my trusty vice grip and I get in there and I lay the vice grip on the bolt like this, and I push and I push and I push, and then I lock it into place. And it's too loose. So I take it apart, I move the little, and I get up there and I push and I push and I lock it into place. And it's tight. Now everything's holding. So I get in the car, I start up the engine, we slowly pull up the hill, get on the gravel next to the freeway, and I start going. And his steering is fine. Braking is fine. I'm back on the road. So I get on the road and I start driving. And I get all the way back to Ada. And I get over to the apartment. I park the car and never think about it again. Every now and then I'll be driving along. And the alternator light will come on and I'll bump it against the curb and it'll go off. And every now and then I'll be like parking and I'll really crank the wheel over and I'll hear this, and that's the edge of the vice grips scraping on the inside of the wheel. And I ease that off. But really, car's doing fine. By this time, I'm down to one lug nut per tire. I've got a baling wire alternator, and I've got my front wheel brake assembly held on by vice grips. And I take a long drive with a buddy of mine. We head all the way down. It was an ROTC training up in Kansas. I picked him up. We went up to Kansas, got hit by lightning, blew all the breakers in the car. Luckily, I had a handful of breakers that were in the glove box, so we mixed and matched, and kept the car running and drove back when we were done. Drove back. I got all the way to Fort Hood, Texas, where I had to drop my buddy off. He had another training he was going to, and I was going back to Yukon until college started up again. And we're about 3 miles outside of Fort Hood, and the back end of my car starts doing this. That's not right. Does it some more. I'm a front-wheel drive, rotary engine, baling wired, vice grip holding on car. What the heck is going on? So he's got minutes before he's going to be late, so we don't stop. We just get there. I say, I'll figure it out. I pull into the parking lot. He jumps out, grabs his bag, and says, "Good luck, Bob." And boom, he's gone. Trust me, I understand. No hard feelings on this. So I climb out and I look up underneath the back of the car, and I'm looking at the now passenger side rear wheel. And the nut that holds the tire assembly, so there's no axle back there, it's just a arm holding the wheel in place. And one of those arms, the nut has come off. It's still on the permanent bolt, but the nut is gone. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, now what am I going to do? Hey, I know how I fixed that other problem with the front wheel. So I just started going around my car and I started taking off. Oh, wait a minute, I'm lying to you. I still had 2 lug nuts on one wheel. Because after going through the whole car, trying different nuts and bolts, the lug nut had the right threading to go on that. The problem was, I was so happy. It left like an inch, maybe an inch and a half that I needed to tighten down, but the lug nut wouldn't go far enough. It would go on there, it would hold, but it wouldn't go in deep enough. And now I am stuck. My vice grips are holding on the front wheel, the front brake assembly, and the baling wire is all used up on the alternator. What am I going to use? So I'm standing there once again, side of my car, and now we're talking about, the mid-'80s. And I'm looking around in this parking lot of Fort Hood, and I notice a beer tab. The tab rings that used to come off of beer, right? And it's laying on the ground there. And I pick it up and I go, that's about the right size of a washer. If I had, there's another one. And another one. So I walked around the parking lot just picking up beer tabs. Don't ask me why I know this number, but 27 beer tabs later, I have enough beer tabs to make up the distance. And I got them all on there, on that bolt. And I get my lug nut on there, and I start putting it on, and I squeeze it tighter and tighter. And I took it off, I put a few more on, boom, boom, boom. Ended up with 27 beer tabs and a lug nut, lug nut, holding on the rear wheel. I get in the car and I start driving. Life is good. And it's like, fabulous. So I drive back home with that car all, taped up. If I had duct tape, it would have been duct tape. And I get home and I get through and I graduate college in that car. And my mom and dad, I don't give them enough praise, but they decided that they were going to not get an expensive car, but get me something. And Samurais were something new out there. They looked cool, and they weren't that expensive, and we went and got a Samurai. We traded my car in. So we take the car in, and the guy takes it for a test drive, looks it over, and we're waiting, and we just keep waiting and waiting and waiting, and finally he comes back, and we said, what's up? He goes, oh, they're still test driving it. Every one of the mechanics had to get in this car and drive it because it had one lug nut on every tire. It had baling wire holding on the alternator. It had a vice grip holding on the brake assembly to the passenger front wheel. It had a lug nut and 27 beer tabs holding on the back tire, and they could not believe that it was drivable. So, holy Toledo, they took it as a trade-in. We got less money than what the stock radio in the Samurai, which was an AM/FM cassette player, was worth more than the trade-in of the GLC. Is it my favorite car? No. Is it an amazing car? Yeah. I can't believe the punishment I gave it and the fact that it made it. You know, this quick story ended up being a long story, but what the hey? We've got good coffee to drink. Absolutely. Let's get the light off of that. See if I can get that to go. Bad to the bone. It is Minion's Dark Roast. Hey, if you're going to try this, try it for the dog. From what I understand, that's Minion. Do it for Minion. Try this coffee. It's smooth. It's tasty. There's no cream, no sugar, nothing added. It's just great coffee. Have a cup, have a coffee break. Thank you for listening to a stupid story about another something in my life that tried to kill me more than once. And you have a great day. Now, get back to work.